Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So today is Monday, therefore it is another sketchbook doodles video, and today we are going to be doing kind of two different spreads, and I kind of filmed them throughout I think the whole day of this entire session, so I do apologize that the lighting is going to change quite a bit, partially because it was really sunny at some point and there's a lot of snow outside, so a lot of the light will reflect into my room, but later on it actually gets cloudy and it's hard for me to get natural sunlight, and it's hard for me to get the lighting to match 100% perfectly, and I feel like it's also because I don't really check back the footage super often, especially when I do traditional art, so I do apologize that the lighting might change quite drastically throughout the whole video. So I showed you guys the supplies that we are going to basically be using today. I'm going to introduce one other supply for this particular spread because I kind of flip-flop between the mediums that I kind of wanted to use for today. So you can see that I started off with pencil, and then we're going to actually be using colored pencils or pencil crayons, and we're going to be coloring the sketches a little bit and seeing how much color I would like to add to each one. So I'm kind of just going to be playing around with how finished I want certain sketches to look, and we'll see where that kind of leads me. So in terms of who we're going to be drawing today, I am going to be drawing Baiju first, and then we're going to draw Kave after. So basically, for Baiju's spread, I am going to be focusing mostly on the pencil crayons, and then the next spread we're going to be doing mostly graphite and a little bit of marker. I think in the future I would like to work a little bit more with the colored pencils or pencil crayons in the sketchbook, just because the paper in this sketchbook is one that I always enjoy using, either wet mediums and dry mediums, because the paper is super smooth, and the way how the colors lay on top of the paper just feels really buttery, and I really like how I can kind of just build up color, but also filling in the whites of the page is quite easy, so I feel like a lot of the doodles or drawings that I would like to do actually turn out pretty nice and fairly vibrant because of that. Okay, so the other material or supply that I wanted to introduce at this point is a ballpoint pen, and the reason is that I kind of wanted to see if I could use this to give me some structure and line work before we actually go into doing some color, because in a different spread that I've done in my sketchbook from this year, I've actually sketched a little bit with a colored pencil, and then I would go in and fill in some areas with a water-based marker, just to add a little bit of value and a little bit of color here and there, and then I would go in and basically kind of flesh out the sketch and add detail and some line work to it by using the ballpoint pen. But I did reach a point where me gripping this pen kind of caused me to have a little bit of pain in my hand, just from me clenching it. And I get this more often with traditional art because I think I mentioned this a long time ago when I used to start sketching and I wanted to get some darker lines and stuff, or just my beginning portion of learning how to draw more or less traditionally, I used to have a deft grip, and I think that kind of caused my hand to be a little bit weak, especially when I clench really hard. And I don't have that problem working digitally, nor usually that problem either when I paint, but it's very prevalent when I'm holding something very tight, such as this ballpoint pen, just because I do treat it like mechanical pencil, but sometimes the lines are a little bit too thin and that you need to press a little bit harder to get those much darker areas that you can see in the corner of his hair, or even just the eye lines and stuff. So even though I do enjoy this pen, I might try to use it a little bit more loosely next time, and we can just build up tone from there, or I'll use a different pen to do the line work so it doesn't really hurt my hand as much. I'm not sure if it's due to my hand being overused and not stretching it properly, but I do want to make sure that I don't get into that state again, because it does feel very bad, I guess, if I do get to that state. So I'm going to try my best to prevent it, because I haven't gotten this feeling too often, especially because I draw more digitally now, but I don't want it to be too much of a hindrance for me doing stuff traditionally either. Okay, so for colors, I didn't really want to do like a whole spread of colors, if that makes sense. I wanted to still keep the color palette fairly similar, so I stuck mostly with the greens and kind of the orangey tones. Here and there, added a little bit of purple or like a little bit of a darker blue-green to some areas, but for the most part, we're sticking kind of with the orange and green, just because I like to keep some of the colors a little bit more minimal if I can, and just add a little bit of detailing here and there if I need to push the values a little bit. Now, when we get to the second doodle, it's gonna be my least favorite. Actually, I can't really say that. Let me put it this way. So, I feel like when I sketch in my sketchbook and I don't sketch out my plan for the drawing out before I record, a lot of things can get quite skewed, and it might be because like how I position myself in my chair. So a lot of the faces kind of get a little bit wonky. I have no excuse for the second one, this one, but the next one is definitely going to look very weird. But I'm going to show you guys the example of my view versus like what you guys are probably seeing, because my webcam is kind of like more of an overhead view or like a side view rather than me being kind of directly across from it and having the paper be very skewed because it's kind of stretching away from me. So things that I draw at the top of the page are going to look a lot bigger than things at closer to the bottom of the page, which is closer to me. But yeah, this one just came out very weird looking. It might be because like the way I drew his mouth and his nose. So yeah, I don't really like this one. I think I just tried my best to quickly color it as fast as possible so that we can move on. And the third one, I am basically going to do a much larger version of just like a simple portrait of Baiju, because I kind of wanted to just play around with the colors and try to see if I can make it a little bit more of a finished look by adding as much color as I could. And I think for that one, I didn't really stick with the kind of color palette that I would like to stick with. So you can even see that I'm sketching with the palette color Eno, because I was gonna try to make this as clean as possible so that we can add a little bit more accurate colors and kind of blend things a little bit so that we can make kind of more of a finished piece, because it's been kind of a while since I've done a colored piece like this in my sketchbook from colored pencils. I also feel weird saying colored pencils, but I feel like it makes the most sense to you guys. I mentioned this in other videos, but I am Canadian, so I do usually say pencil crayons instead of colored pencils, because that's usually how we label these kind of tools, I guess, if that makes sense. I know when people think of like crayons, they think of those waxy little short stubby drawing material, but for us the pencil crayons are these colored pencils. So once I did the sketch with the palette color Eno, I went ahead and erased it a little bit so that the lines don't stand up too much. And then we are going to start in by adding the skin tone. I'm going to try my best to kind of establish a sense of lighting, and I'm defaulting to this one. So usually when I don't have an idea for lighting, I stick with the upper left, making that the light source, peering down to probably the bottom right, kind of in a diagonal, just so that I can kind of keep things a little bit consistent, and it gives me a good idea of how I want to shade the face as well. So similarly to other mediums where I do the skin first, usually as I get darker with the shading, I do make it a lot warmer, and then as we get to like the darkest areas, I do make it a little bit more unsaturated, and then also kind of cooler, so we can kind of push the amount of shadows and stuff a little bit further back, just to create a little bit more depth, if that makes sense. But I'm gonna be working a lot on his skin and then his hair as well, but you guys are gonna see in a bit that his hair, like the back of his head where his hair stops, is kind of really far back. And at the end, when I show you guys the actual spread, you're gonna actually be able to see kind of the difference from if I don't prop my sketchbook up. Now, I did think about propping my sketchbook. I think I do it for the next spread because of me noticing the skewing, because I really do need it kind of like is it, I guess, parallel with my face, or like where at least where my eyes are, so that I know I'm not skewing it too much, and that any kind of skewing of the body or proportions and stuff is just purely by like my own mistake, rather than me having my eyes kind of play a trick on me because my paper is receding. So but for the colors, like I said, I do like how they lay on this paper. The paper is very smooth, takes the colors very well, and I'm able to layer up in a way that doesn't feel like I'm pushing it too hard. So I'm just slowly layering one by one, just by doing lighter colors to darker colors. And then in some areas where I want to fill in more of the white of the area, I would usually take the lightest color and kind of lightly blend everything together. I know for this one, I think I also don't like how saturated the skin looks. He looks very burnt-ish in a sense, because I used a lot of reds and probably not enough purples to push the shadows to be a little bit more dull, and to push basically the shadows back a little bit to create a little bit more depth, instead of just adding more and more warmth, because he looks very saturated right now, and it probably doesn't help with how my camera's picking it up. He looks extremely saturated. I'm actually going to take a look at my sketchbook right now to see how I feel about it. Because I did do these like a few days ago, so I don't really remember. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, he's kind of just overly saturated a little bit. I also don't really like how I drew his nose and his mouth. There's a lot of issues with this one, which I don't really particularly like, but in general, still very fun to do, because like I said, I did like the layering of the colored pencils. I am using the Artex ones over my Prismacolor this time, just because easy access, but also the wide range of colors that I can choose from is pretty much kind of left a little bit untouched, because I've only done, I think, an illustration or two with these colored pencils. So I do want to get a little bit more use out of them if I can. Oh, I'm glad I'm kind of knocked back the kind of reddish orange a little bit with the purple. Now, because the paper is very buttery smooth, a little bit of the pigment does slide around a little bit if we do reach that point of where the layering has been layered up too much, because it kind of builds up a little bit of a, not like a film, but a lot of colored pencils that have a little bit more of that waxy kind of texture is only able to blend or work up a certain amount of layers before your paper and your surface no longer accepts any more of that pigment, and you're kind of left with just pushing around that waxy surface. So I did get to that kind of point a little bit near the skin area. Yeah, and for the most part, once I started working on the glove, I think that's when I realized I don't really like this drawing, probably because I got up from my workstation and probably saw that from above, his hair is very large and kind of big compared to the rest of his face and stuff. So yeah. Also, I don't know why I keep making his lips more and more like intense with color. I don't think that really helps too much. I kind of wish I added more of a darker outline for his mouth, so that we can just see the lips where it forms, rather than the kind of outline of where I put the shadows, because it looks like he's like over applied lipstick or something to the edges, which not a good look, unless it's like, you know, you intentionally want that. But I think I did overshoot a little bit for the corner of his mouth, so yeah. But I think that's for the most part it. Just a few last things, and that is basically it. So you can see how saturated I got the colors on the right side. Also, this is how I see it, so it didn't look as skewed as when you put the book fully flat. So yeah, this is what I saw, and then as soon as I put it down is basically what you guys see, which is his hair being very skewed. But yeah, this is all for the first spread, and we can go ahead to the second spread, which I'm going to be focusing mostly with graphite and a little bit of marker to accent the page. So when I do these kinds of spreads, I do default a lot of the times either to the center, kind of like the left of the center of the spread, to either put like more of a waist up drawing, or I will stick to the bottom left and work my way from kind of like in a fan motion. Just because I am right-handed, me working from the left just makes sure that I don't kind of smudge my drawings, and I feel like that's a little bit more important when I'm working with graphite. Also, I'm gonna accidentally give him a tiny hand here. I think I don't realize how big the head was. You can see that his neck is also not the right size at this point, so I'm definitely gonna have to adjust it, but I forgot to adjust the hand at some point. So, I think by the time you guys see this video, yes, I think I used these ones kind of as a practice run of just trying to get used to drawing Kaveh a little bit. And I've drawn him once before because I did do the marker ASMR drawing of him with the Ohuhu markers, I believe. And because it's been a little bit of a while since I've drawn him and actually take a proper look at his design, I decided that I wanted to... Why did I not fix that hand? I really wish I fixed that hand. That really sucks. His fingers look very short too, especially his pinky. So it definitely looks very weird. We'll get onto like the other sketches as well, because I kind of throw in a little bit more of a looser sketch-ish in the middle, and then we'll do kind of a bigger one of him on the right side, kind of similar to how I did Baiju, with a larger one on the right page, basically. So for both of the spreads, I only did 3 little sketches or drawings or whatever you want to call them. And usually if I can, I try to fill up the entirety of the page, but I definitely wasn't really feeling these drawings at all. And I don't know if it's because I felt like I wanted to try something else, or I was more eager to paint, if anything. So maybe for next week's video I might be doing gouache or watercolor. I'm also like in the process of trying to do a larger watercolor piece, and I'm gonna see if I can record it. I pulled out my old DSLR camera, and I actually got a new kind of battery charging thing together with it so that it won't die when I'm recording. But because my computer no longer accepts the program that my camera uses, I can't record as easily, which is why I never really switched back to using my DSLR camera, even though I do own one, and I always use the webcam. I know some people don't really like the quality of the webcam, especially for traditional drawing, but for the most part, as long as like I'm drawing somewhat dark enough, it actually does show up okay. But in the future, I'll definitely look for some alternatives at some point. But for the watercolor piece, I am trying to draw on my iPad to plan out a drawing that is going to be on a 15 by 10.2 inch watercolor pad. So basically, I found another brand that has a kind of like a gummed surface, or not gummed surface, gummed edges on every side of the paper except for the center part, so that I can do some more like heavy washes if I can, because I really do want to improve watercolor painting, and I want to practice a little bit more with that by going a little bit bigger and being a little bit more ambitious with it. And this time I am working with the hot press paper too, because I have plenty of cold press paper that is, I think, 11 by 15, which generically is like a size that a lot of paper brands make anyways. So I do have some from previous years, but recently I've been gravitating towards using hot press paper for watercolors, so definitely want to revisit that as soon as I can, and as soon as I finish the sketch up digitally and finding a way to transfer it to the watercolor pad, because I won't be able to use the light pad or that surface to make sure that my sketch is seen through the paper, because everything is gummed together. I don't own like carbon paper, so I might do the old-fashioned way and just scribble a bunch of graphite on the back of some pieces of paper with my sketch printed out, and using some kind of hard writing utensil like a ballpoint pen or something, and going over my sketch so I can transfer the graphite to my watercolor paper. But I might have to do some trial and test runs, because I don't want to put too much pressure on my paper too, because I don't want to cause like indentations. But yeah, I'll update you guys like if I ever do the video, or if I can record the whole process, I'll definitely talk about it there. But back to the sketches in my sketchbook. So the one of Kaveh in the center, I was trying to make it look like he's panicked because he's not able to finish maybe his I don't know what you call it, maybe a blueprint. I didn't do architecture in school. I was an art kid though, but I did not major in architecture or anything. I was a BFA major, and all I know is portfolio time is always crunch time, and I absolutely hated it. But it was definitely one of the times where I produced so much stuff in a short amount of time. which is good and bad in a sense, but it was kind of good for like my work ethic, if anything, during that time, even though it was stressful. The last one, I just wanted to draw a bigger version of his face. Not gonna lie, if you guys have seen Kave's like, or Kave, I don't know how you say his name, Kave or Kave, his official art, his face in general is very pretty. So I don't know, I just keep looking at his face, so all I want to do is draw his face. So if I end up drawing him a lot, I do excuse myself, but also I'm gonna try my best to draw him more so I can practice kind of capturing his likeness a little bit better. So here's these sketches from this spread, just 3 more. Little itty bitty baby hand right there. Yeah, let's not look at that. And then we have one here where I kind of think like someone gave him his briefcase, so he's just receiving the briefcase. And then obviously the one in the center is just him being frustrated. And because the page looks super bare and I had these kind of awkward spaces everywhere, I decided that I would fill it in with some color and just kind of brighten up the page, but also fill up the space. And I put a little thing right here for a memo for myself, and hopefully a little thing to hopefully give me RNG look for when his banner comes out, because I really do want him to come home when his banner does come out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's weird kind of session of sketches and drawings, and I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!